Today on Lots of Thoughts, a sports podcast, we have a very special episode, the first of our NBA preview series for the 2023-2024 season. We're previewing the Eastern Conference, predicting the standings 1 through 15 as we've done in years past. This time we have a special guest, Will Eckenfelder, joining the program today. So we're going to be comparing our lists, seeing where we differ, talking about what we're looking at each team as we near the start of the NBA season. Without further ado, let's get into it. But first, we got to do some housekeeping. If you aren't already following, follow us on Instagram at Lots of Thoughts Sports, on Twitter at LOT Sports Pod, on Facebook at Lots of Thoughts Sports, on YouTube at Lots of Thoughts Sports. Click subscribe if you're watching over there, and the like button as well lets me know that you like the content. It pushes it out to sports fans who are new to the Lots of Thoughts family, so please do that. If you're listening on an audio platform, rate us 5 stars. Head over to YouTube and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate all the support on all the platforms. You can visit our website, lotsofthoughts.godaddysite.com, to access the podcast, the newsletter, the YouTube channel, all the socials, the merchandise, lotsofthoughts.godaddysite.com. Now, without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, everybody, I am pleased to join you today on this NBA preview episode with special guest, William Eckenfelder. Hello, Will. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's going to be a lot of fun today. We're going to be going over the Eastern Conference on this episode, with the Western Conference episode to come. We're just going to be breaking down what we both made projections on, where we have them, the 15 teams seeded by the end of the year, and then a few notes on each, kind of giving a preview before the start of the season. So we'll start with the bottom here, number 15. I have the Charlotte Hornets. Where do you have them, Will?
I also have the Charlotte Hornets at 15.
Nice to see. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Charlotte Hornets, they brought back Miles Bridges, although amidst another controversy. They drafted Brandon Miller at number 2, made a few other additions, but no huge names. They extended LaMelo Ball, re-signed PJ Washington, and then they did lose out on, they lost Dennis Smith, Kelly Oubre Jr., and just recently Kai Jones. I think for me, one of the big focuses is kind of how long can they keep LaMelo happy, because I think he's a player who probably wants to win and is not in a winning situation and has never been. When he's healthy, he's a very good player. But I don't know what's around him this year to really make him want to stay long term.
Yeah, that's basically all. Yeah, I mean, those are my notes as well. It just looks like they didn't really try that hard. I mean, Brandon Miller looks pretty good, but his first year, it's possible to say anything. So I don't know. It just looks like the same as last year almost. And I think losing Kelly Oubre Jr. was actually a pretty big loss, honestly.
So, I agree. I think he adds kind of like a veteran presence for them that they don't really have now, especially with a whole bunch of controversy and the coaching turnovers over the past few years. And now, I mean, they're bringing in a guy in Brandon Miller who, in some aspects and some viewpoints, was a controversial number 2 overall pick because Scoot Henderson was available. So I think that's going to be interesting as we go through the season to see how it lasts.
Definitely.
All right. Number 14, I have the Washington Wizards.
I also have the Washington Wizards.
Okay. Let me pull up the additions and subtractions here. The Wizards, they obviously traded for Jordan Poole. They also traded for Tyus Jones. They added a few other pieces, Mike Muscala, Landry Shamet. They re-signed Taj Gibson and Kyle Kuzma. And then, of course, they lost Kristaps Porzingis to the Celtics, Bradley Beal to the Suns, and Monte Morris, among a few others. And I think that the first edition is the main focus here. I think Jordan Poole's going to score a lot for them. It's just a question of how efficient I think he can be. Is he an elite scorer, or is he a guy that's just going to chuck up a bunch?
See, I think he can be an elite scorer. I think my problem with Poole is his defense. I think losing Porzingis is a huge defensive loss, and just getting is not going to fill that void in any way. So I think their defensive numbers are going to drop this season as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think already their pieces weren't that great defensively, but Porzingis, like you mentioned, but that's a good point. Porzingis does cover a lot up. He's an underrated rim protector, in my opinion. And
I agree.
When you don't have that, I mean, I think I completely agree. And I think Tyus Jones is kind of an interesting dynamic here, because when they traded for him, I thought, okay, he's going to be the lead guy. He's going to be the one, to have his own team. And then they
Yeah.
trade for Jordan Poole, who's probably going to be in that role. I don't know how long Tyus Jones is really going to be there, honestly.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyus Jones is gone by next year, or
Right.
even by the trade deadline.
I could see a team that I really wanted the Nets to spring on him during the offseason, just because I felt like he could be a good, piece to add to that defensive minded core. But I don't think that's likely now with Ben Simmons being a focus for them.
I agree.
But it'd be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Number 13, I have the Detroit Pistons.
Okay, number 15. Okay, so my next three were pretty tough for me. I didn't really know.
Agreed.
I have three that I felt pretty interchangeable between 11 and 13. But I ended up putting Orlando at 13.
Who were the other two? Just let's
I had Detroit and the Bulls.
Okay, Detroit, the Bulls, and then Orlando were the three. And that's okay. That's essentially what I had. I had 11 Bulls, 12 Magic, 13 Pistons. So we're just kind of mixing them up there. Let's start with the Pistons. I know you're a fan of the said Detroit Pistons in some capacity.
I am a bit of a fan.
They didn't make a huge amount of moves in the offseason. They did get Monte Morris, Joe Harris. They drafted Asar Thompson. I think that's kind of the fun piece they're adding. And obviously Cade's going to be healthy. And they really didn't lose out on a whole lot, in my opinion. But Cade's health, and I think the combination of him and Asar and Jalen Duren, I think you have a young core to build around, and how good can those guys be, not only this season, but in the next couple seasons, is kind of what I'm looking for.
I personally think Jalen Duren has the potential to be a defensive beast in the next coming years, just for his career. And I think I forgot their coach's name, but he came in kind of at a weird time last season. And I think him having a whole off season and being able to work with these young guys a little bit more will be a huge asset to the Pistons this season.
It's Monty Williams. They got the Suns head coach. Yes, I think he's going to be big for them. I think that coaching upgrade. I mean, Pistons have always felt like they never had the guy to be their culture leader as a head coach, and I feel like Monty is that guy. So I think that's definitely the point. And I think Cade really has the potential to have an all-star season if he can stay healthy and put up what he's expected to do. And so I think this is a team that I could see, just like you were saying about how you struggled to order those three. I could see them making a play-in push towards the end of the season if everything goes right.
I could too. Definitely.
Let's go to the Magic next.
Okay.
This off season, and I apologize for having to click back and forth here.
No, it's okay.
They drafted Anthony Black. They signed Joe Ingles. Not a lot of additions otherwise. They re-signed Mo Wagner. They let Bol go. Not that that's a huge loss for them. I think the question for me for the Magic is they've got I think the front court's pretty set, right? But
absolutely,
their guard rotation, I think, is someone's going to get left out or left with less minutes than the Magic would like, between Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and now with Anthony Black. Someone's going to get the short end of the stick, even if they all play. And I'm curious who that's going to end up being.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see. I think their whole guard situation will be more fleshed out by the time the trade deadline comes around. But by then, will it be a little bit too late? Who knows? I think it'll be interesting to see if Banchero has a sophomore slump. Because I think last year even though he got Rookie of the Year, I think he was still underrated. I thought he had an incredible season for a rookie.
Agreed.
And I think Joe Ingles could be good just to add another level of shooting to their team.
Agreed.
But once again, we'll just have to see. I feel like this team feels a little too up in the air.
Yeah, I feel like they, out of all the teams on this list, they have the highest range of where they could be. Like I could see them if Paolo takes another step. Paolo was in his first year, I think one of those prospects that really looked like an NBA player right away, which is tough to find. And if Franz can be that number 2, if you can get good guard play, they could be a really good team. But I could also honestly see them being the 15th seed and looking for answers.
I could too.
Throughout the season.
Definitely.
All right. And then the last one we had here was the Chicago Bulls, who also did not do a lot. They signed Javon Carter and Torrey Craig. That's about it. They re-signed Ayo Dosunmu. They extended Nikola Vucevic for some reason. They re-signed Kobe White. They lost Patrick Beverly and Derek Jones. I think the Bulls are the least interesting team in the NBA. I'm just waiting for when they eventually blow it up and who goes first, right? Is it Zach LaVine? Is it DeMar? Is it whoever else?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. My only notes on the Bulls were no real improvements of the roster. Like I don't see anything really different from last year. The only argument that you can make for them is that they still technically have 3 stars on their team. And like that's about it. But then even to that point, those stars weren't really performing very well last year.
Right.
So I think all 3 of those guys are definitely going to have to step up in huge ways if this roster is going to do anything significant.
And I feel like they almost it's so, if I was a Bulls fan, I'd be so disappointed because they lack direction. I could 100% see them getting to midseason and being the 8th, 9th seed and deciding to just keep the same roster and run it through, or make a small addition and end up a play-in team and get bounced again. And where are you at the end of the season?
Yeah, I'd be a very upset Bulls fan too.
All right.
Doesn't look fun.
Right. 100%. All right. So number 10, the first play-in team. I have the Indiana Pacers.
Me too.
All right. That it hurt a little bit. I wanted to put the Pacers higher, honestly, but as I got down the list, I think it made most sense to slot them here.
I agree. Yeah, I felt my next 4 were pretty tough, but
Agreed.
I feel a little more solid in these ones.
So the Pacers, they signed Bruce Brown from the Nuggets. They traded for Obi Toppin from the Knicks. They drafted Jarris Walker at 8th overall. They extended Tyrese Halliburton. They did trade away Chris Duarte. They let George Hill go and let O'Shea Brissett go. Not huge losses necessarily. For them, I think if Tyrese Halliburton is healthy, I think they're almost guaranteed to be a play-in team. And if you add Benedict Mathurin into the starting lineup, you give Bruce Brown that gritty veteran role that I think this team kind of needed. I think it's going to be a fun team to watch.
Definitely. I think it's been well known. I'm probably going to bring this up a few times during this episode, but I think it's well known that when players come back from international tournaments, just being FIBA, there's a small increase. You can visually see a small increase in skill. So I think Tyrese is going to come out even better than he was last year. And I think having Bruce Brown as another veteran presence on the team will be huge. And I do think the Obi Toppin addition is huge for them.
I agree. I think it's somewhat underrated because Obi Toppin never had the opportunity with the Knicks. He was always behind Julius Randle, and they tried to get some small ball lineups in, but neither of them can really play center. And so I think he never really got the opportunity. And granted, it's because Julius Randle only took off after they drafted Obi Toppin. So you can't really blame the Knicks. They didn't know what they had in Julius Randle at the time. But I think him with Tyrese Halliburton's passes and Obi Toppin's verticality, I think it's going to be fun to watch.
I definitely agree.
All right. Number 9, I had the Toronto Raptors.
Oh, okay. At number 9, I have Atlanta.
Atlanta. Okay. That's one of the teams. I have Atlanta at 7, so not far away. How far away did you have the Raptors?
I have the Raptors at 4, actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I have high hopes for the Raptors.
Okay. Let's start with the Hawks then, since you have them. We both have them closer to the bottom.
Okay.
Let me pull up their list. They obviously lost John Collins, trading him to Utah. They also lost Aaron Holiday. They drafted Kobe Buffkin, 15th overall, signed Wesley Matthews, and traded for Patty Mills. And then they extended DeJounte Murray. I think for them, it's kind of hoping that there's an addition by subtraction by letting John Collins go, hoping a guy takes up that role, whether that's Jalen Johnson. And whether that's DeAndre Hunter, if he has another level. I don't believe he does, but whoever's going to take that, tertiary scoring role. And I think it's also how long or how much effort Quinn Snyder can have and how much change he can bring to this team after only having a half a season of coaching last year.
Yeah, I think that was one of my biggest things is can he elevate this team? And we've heard about Trey Jones's problems with coaches, and we'll see if maybe a whole season together, if they can really work together. But like kind of how I felt with the Bulls, even though they did have some trades, and you said there were some notable ones. To me, I didn't really feel like there was much improvement to Atlanta overall. I think that they're kind of in the same boat. I really just see them at 9. I see them going for playing. I see Trey Jones talking a lot of smack, but
Trey Young, I assume.
Oh, right? Trey Young. Yeah.
I could see that. Honestly, I think if everything goes perfectly, their ceiling is maybe the 5th seed and first round loss. And I don't know that that's really what they're looking for, especially when they traded so much to get DeJounte Murray, and they don't really have an avenue to get much better than they are right now. I think it's tough for them in retrospect, even though the deal I think made somewhat of sense at the time.
I agree.
All right. So at number 8, I have the Miami Heat.
At number 8, I have Brooklyn.
Okay. Where do you have the Heat?
6.
Okay. So that's funny. We just have them switched because I have the Nets at 6 and then the Heat at 8. Let's start with the Heat. Not really not a lot of notable moves. I think everyone was waiting for them to make the Dame trade that never happened.
Yep.
They drafted Jaime Jaquez, signed Josh Richardson, bring him back. They brought in Thomas Bryant, re-signed Kevin Love, and then lost Gabe Vincent to the Lakers and Max Strus to Cleveland, in a minor way lost Victor Oladipo to Houston. I think for them, it's kind of who's going to be the guy that we never heard of that contributes in a major way, like someone does every year. And that when you lose out on Strus and Vincent, someone's got to take those minutes and those, that scoring load. And I'm curious to see who that is.
Yeah, I think, you saw highlights going around of the Swider kid. Forgot his first name. I don't really think it'll be him. I did see, like you said about Banchero, where he kind of came in as like a full NBA player. I feel like I saw flashes of that in Jaquez Jr. He looked really, really good for being a rookie, and I could see as the season develops, him really developing as a big player on the Heat.
I could see that. Yeah, I agree in the fact I think Cole Swider has gotten a lot of buzz just in the offseason because someone's got to talk about a performer in the preseason. But
yeah,
I think Jaquez is likely to be the guy if they're going to get some more minutes out of them. But nonetheless, I think also a full season of Kevin Love will help them in some capacity. And they're just going to be ready for the playoffs. That's what they always are. The regular season is just getting in for them.
Definitely. Yep. They've said it actually. Like I think Jimmy has actually said it. That he kind of coasts, and then when it comes to like the last 10, 15 games of the season, he pulls it on, and then playoffs come around and it's on.
Right. I know. And you almost wonder how long he could do that, because in some capacity you worry about the Heat not making it, and because they were close. They almost lost that play-in game to the Bulls and were eliminated.
Yep.
So and then let's go to the Nets since you had them at 9.
Okay.
We pull them up, although I could probably do this off the top of my head being a Nets fan. They drafted Noah Clowney in the first round, brought in Dennis Smith and Lonnie Walker. Also some minor players I'm not going to really cover. They re-signed Cameron Johnson, but they lost a lot of shooting. Joe Harris, Patty Mills, Yuta Watanabe, and Seth Curry. For them, I think I don't necessarily disagree with your ranking, because I think realistically they could, in my mind, they could be anywhere from 6 to 10. And I think that largely depends on 2 players. It depends on Ben Simmons, obviously, which I think is the conversation of the offseason for them. If he
Definitely.
is even 70% of what he was in Philly, then I think they have a good shot to be the 6th or 7th seed.
Absolutely.
If he is what he is last year, they're going to have a tough time in making the play-in. And then I think the second is Mikal Bridges and whether he could be the first guy. And as much as I like watching him and he's the best player on my favorite team, he's probably my favorite player on the Nets. I don't know that he could be the number one, the all-star caliber player for the full length of the season on a good team.
I feel the exact same way. I think Mikal Bridges, if Ben Simmons can be old Ben, or at least a fraction of what he was, I see Mikal Bridges as the Robin to his Batman. And I think that that's possible. And I think in these preseason games, Ben Simmons has started to look like himself. And I think that their defense actually will only improve as a team. I think Nick Claxton will only improve. And I think if Ben Simmons can be that guy, I think the dynamic of Nick Claxton and Ben Simmons will be very fun to watch.
It will, definitely. I think in an ideal world for the Nets, Claxton is like the third guy, if Ben Simmons and Mikal Bridges are the first guy. But if Ben Simmons is not the first, Claxton's the second. I don't know if he could take a huge leap next season. I think he's going to improve, but I don't think he could take a big enough leap to keep them afloat as the second best player.
I could see that. Definitely.
All right. So who did you have at number 7? Did we already cover them?
No. Number 7, I had the Knicks.
Okay. So I had them at 5.
Okay.
So the Knicks, if I could find my notes here, they brought in Dante DiVincenzo, Ryan Arcidiacono to try to assemble that full Villanova championship roster. Aside from Mikal Bridges, they re-signed Josh Hart, but they lost Obi Toppin, lost Derrick Rose, and nothing else really that major. I think for them, the question is just, is Jalen Brunson that elite perennial all-star player that he showed flashes of, or is he the guy who's the best player on a decent team that's going to get touches because he's the starting point guard?
See, I think last year, right, they started with Randall as kind of their main big man, their everything. And then when the playoffs came around, you saw the shift of Brunson becoming their main player. And I think that they're going to stick with that, especially at the start of the season with Brunson coming off the FIBA team and everything. He will definitely be their main star. And I think it'll be interesting to see how far he can take the Knicks in a regular season. I do think them acquiring the guy, DiVincenzo is huge for their shooting even more. But I don't think it's really that significant. I don't think DiVincenzo is going to do too much to the Knicks.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's an element of what they need, and they need, they benefit from the grit and grind that I think he can still provide in some capacity. Mm-hmm. But the shooting last year, I mean, guys like Evan Fournier were not rotational players. Mm-hmm. And I think that really made them suffer. So they're going to be desperately looking to him to make more shots like they did Josh Hart last year down the stretch.
I agree.
Okay, so we already my 6 was the Nets, your 6 was the Heat, so we've covered them. Mm-hmm. Who is your number 5?
I had Cleveland.
Okay, so I had them at 3rd.
Okay.
So they're I think we're both going to have the same number 1 and the number 2, and I think
definitely
the question at number 3 is who's going to, in my opinion, make the most effort in the regular season, and not necessarily who the best team is. But they brought in more shooting. They brought in George Niang. They brought in Max Strus, re-signed Karis LeVert. They did lose out on Danny Green, Robin Lopez, Chetty Osman, and then they're not going to have Ricky Rubio due to mental health and stepping away from basketball. So a few notes I had. I think Evan Mobley's kind of the key for them, and not only for this year, but in the future. I think him and Jared Allen are not the best fit side by side. And if he takes a step up, I could see them at the end of the season kind of moving on from Jared Allen, getting something valuable back for him, and kind of giving Evan Mobley the keys at center.
Okay.
Especially if Donovan Mitchell doesn't re-sign before that point, which I don't think he's going to.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing a lot, and I agree. I don't think Mitchell's going to stay around. I do think you're absolutely right on Darius Garland. I think that he is just like 1 to 2 seasons away from becoming the Cavs' biggest star since LeBron. And I honestly just think they are like the sleeper team of the East. I think that they have so much potential. And with all of their guys having as much experience as they now have, just going through the little bit of playoff that they did last year, even though they got kicked out of the first round. I think that there's going to be kind of a fire under them, and I think that they're gonna show up.
Yeah, I could see that. I think with the playoff last year, I think they were the better team going in, and maybe that's just bias because I'm a Nets fan and I don't want the Knicks to succeed necessarily. But I think they are going to have something under, because they didn't just lose; they got their butts handed to them last year.
Absolutely, yeah, they got smashed. Yeah,
so yeah, I could definitely see them making a bounce back, like you say. All right, number 4, you had the Toronto Raptors. Is that correct?
I had the Raptors at 4. Yep.
Okay, let's go over them since I had them so much lower.
Yeah, yeah.
This is our biggest difference, I think.
Yeah,
clearly in this list.
definitely.
Okay, so they drafted Grady Dick 13th overall, signed Jalen McDaniels, signed Dennis Schroeder. They re-signed Jakob Poeltl, which I think is their biggest offseason move. They let Fred VanVleet leave, Will Barton, Delano Banton as well. Not really huge names outside of VanVleet. For them, I think the key is the development of Scotty Barnes. And I almost think in some way letting Fred VanVleet go hints at the fact that they're going to put the ball in the hands of Scotty Barnes more. Because
definitely
with Dennis Schroeder and who's their backup point guard, Malachi Flynn, I think, there's not a guy that you want as your starting point guard there to take those ball handling minutes. And although Pascal is a good player, OG are good players, you don't want the ball in their hands as the primary creator on offense.
No, but I think you're underselling Dennis Schroeder to this team. I think Dennis Schroeder is going to be such a huge asset to them. And I'm going to say the same thing. Coming off of a FIBA championship, actually, I think Schroeder is going to have a different insight and add a different level of, I think, almost like strength, like mental strength to this team that I think that they really, really need. And yeah, Scotty Barnes, he had a sophomore slump last year. You can look at his stats from his rookie to sophomore year. I think he's coming into this third year, and I think he's going to show up. That's why I have him so high. I think these guys are really going to be a beast of a team this year.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So by the end of the season, if you have them at, what was it, the third, fourth?
I have them at 4, yeah.
If you have them at 4, who by the end of the year do you think? How do you think the ranking of who's the guy in Toronto? Do you think Scotty Barnes is going to be second behind Pascal? How high do you think he could ascend?
I think by the end of the year, Scotty Barnes will be the guy.
Really, the guy.
I think Scotty Barnes can be the guy on the team by the end of the year. And I think Schroeder and Pascal and OG will kind of be that supporting cast that he needs. But I just think Scotty Barnes has so much potential, and I think if he really taps into it this year, and I think with Dennis Schroeder, I really think Schroeder being kind of a vet even, I know that Pascal is at this point too, but coming from just a different perspective is going to give Scotty Barnes a fire, I think, and I'm excited to see.
I don't hate it. I mean, I agree with you with the potential. I mean, this is a guy they didn't want to trade for Kevin Durant not too long ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they see the potential in him, and if they're going to give him the ball, I think, there's no excuses for him to not take a step up. It's just a question of how big that step can be.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so back up to the top of the list here. So we left off. I had at my number 4 the 76ers, who I'm assuming you have third.
I have third. Yep.
Okay, so not too far off
Yeah.
there. The 76ers, of course, they have the ongoing James Harden situation that we don't know what the solution is there yet.
Yep.
But they also signed Patrick Beverley, brought in Mo Bamba, Danny Green, Kelly Oubre, who I think is the biggest addition for them. They re-signed Montrezl Harrell and Paul Reed. They lost Jalen McDaniels and George Niang, Shake Milton. I don't think those are huge pieces to replace, but
I agree.
For them, I mean, obviously the situation with James Harden is kind of up in the air. If they have James Harden, they're easily the third, in my opinion, and I don't think it's close. I don't know that is the case. And if he's gone, I don't know how long Joel Embiid is going to stay happy with the 76ers, especially if they struggle early on.
Yeah, I've already heard small rumors that he does not really want to stay. And I've heard that he's kind of looking at the Knicks. So yeah, that it was kind of hard for me to put Philly at 3 just because of the James Harden thing. But just considering how well they did last year, I felt like I kind of had to put him up there. And I think Tyrese Maxey, if they don't have Harden, is really going to come into form this year. I think he's going to show a lot. And I think that bringing Danny Green back, I think, is huge for them as well. And I still think that their bench and just their whole roster is very deep. So I think that's part of another reason why I felt I could put them at 3 is it feels like their roster will never really be out of options.
I agree. I think the coaching turnover also helps with that, bringing in a guy in Nick Nurse, who I think Toronto made a mistake to let go. I think he's an upgrade over Doc Rivers, significant upgrade. And I think he's going to get the most out of a guy like Tyrese Maxey if he's the starting point guard. And we saw what Maxey, I mean, in the year that Ben Simmons was out, we saw what Maxey can provide as the lead ball handler. And I think he could even be I think he could be in all-star conversations if he's the guy at the point guard position.
I think he could definitely be all-star. I could see it.
All right. And then number 2, I have the Milwaukee Bucks.
Me too.
All right. For them, obviously, they made one sizable addition by trading for Dame, but they also signed Malik Beasley, brought back Robin Lopez, signed Cameron Payne to be their backup point guard, re-signed Jay Crowder, re-signed Brooke Lopez, re-signed Chris Middleton. Obviously, they traded away Drew Holiday and Grayson Allen in those deals. They lost Wesley Matthews, Joe Ingles, and Javon Carter as well. I think for them, they're going to be one of the most fun teams to watch. I've always thought in an ideal world, this is before Giannis won the ring with Milwaukee, but in an ideal world for Golden State and a perfect pairing with Curry would be Giannis, right? Who could complement him by taking that interior up, and Curry having that elite spacing. And obviously Giannis won a chip in with Milwaukee. He's not leaving anytime soon, but I think Dame is kind of exactly that prototype, just a little bit worse than Steph.
Yeah.
And that spacing that Giannis is going to have on the interior is going to be fun to watch him take advantage of.
Absolutely. He's talked about it already. He's amazed at watching somebody else be double teamed, like the amount of space he's going to have. I really don't see how this team falls below 3 even. I mean, these guys are going to be such a force to be reckoned with. I do have questions about their defense, just losing Drew Holiday. Damian Lillard is not known to be a super defender, so I think that'll be kind of interesting to watch what happens to their defense. And I think getting a new coach is kind of up for question as well still. Seeing how this new coach kind of works around their roster will be interesting, because their old coach was very defensively minded. And so we'll see what this guy does getting Dame, who's a very offensive player.
Yeah, I think that's certainly an intriguing part of this. Like you mentioned, not Drew Holiday is so elite defensively, and then Chris Middleton. I mean, while he was elite earlier in his career, he's definitely slowed down a little bit, and maybe he's bouncing back this season. I could see it offensively, but maybe not as much defensively for them. And even though Brooke Lopez and Giannis are both very good defenders, I agree. I think the defense is certainly going to be a question. And then number one, we both have the Boston Celtics.
Yeah,
For them, I think even though the Bucks made the biggest splash, I think the Celtics showed the most improvement in my opinion.
I agree.
They traded for Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis. They also brought in O'Shea Brissett, Wenyen Gabriel, drafted Jordan Walsh. They re-signed Jaylen Brown, or sorry, extended Jaylen Brown, extended Peyton Pritchard, and then they did obviously lose Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Danilo Gallinari, Blake Griffin, if he's worth mentioning. I think I thought the Marcus Smart trade for Porzingis in a vacuum was a good deal, not a great deal. But the ability to go out and get Drew Holiday, who can fit into that exact role, maybe not the same vocal leader role, but the same role on the basketball court, but do it significantly better than Smart. I think they got way better as a starting lineup and as a team overall.
Absolutely. I think this team is probably going to be top 3 defensive team of the year. I think just their starting lineup, just getting Drew and Kristaps Porzingis, it's going to be insane for them. And I'm really excited to see Joe Mazzulla have a second full year as a coach, because he kind of came in, I think it was like in the middle of the off season last year.
It was right before training camp last year.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, he kind of was a little bit thrown into it, and I imagine he probably had to do a lot of things on the fly. So I think having a second full year with this team is going to be huge for his development as a coach and this team, just overall development.
I agree, and I think him as a coach, he didn't show a lot. He didn't really show a lot of bad last year, and I know a lot of people wished he would have showed more good, especially in the playoffs. But I think, like you mentioned, he was really put in a tough spot with the whole Ime Udoka situation, and he's got a significantly better roster this year, upgrades at point guard and center. I hope they give more of a role to Derek White. I think that'll be interesting to see. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league. Is kind of a glue guy.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I think through and through they'll be a better team than last year.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's our 15 through 1. I'm gonna run through mine again, 1 through 15, and then Will, you do it right after me if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I have the Celtics first, followed by the Bucks, then the Cavs at 3, 76ers at 4, Knicks at 5, Nets at 6, and then the play-in I had the Hawks, the Heat, the Raptors, and the Pacers. And then just out of the play-in I had the Bulls, followed by the Magic, the Pistons, the Wizards, and the Hornets at 15.
Okay. I have Boston at 1, Bucks at 2, Philly at 3, Toronto at 4, Cleveland at 5, Heat at 6. Play-in, I got Knicks at 7, Brooklyn at 8, 9 Atlanta, Pacers at 10. Then I have Bulls, Detroit, Orlando, and Washington at 14, 15 Charlotte.
Awesome. So we'll see. We'll compare at the end of the year how well we did, and I think we'll both be pretty close. But there's always some variance with one or two teams that make a rise.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fun time. Thank you for coming on to this Eastern Conference preview, and talk to you soon on the Western Conference.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. That'll do it for this episode of Lots of Thoughts, a sports podcast. I hope you enjoyed. It was a lot of fun talking to Will about the Eastern Conference prediction. Stay tuned for the Western Conference predictions on the way, and let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, or head over to the socials if you're on a podcast platform. Let me know what you think of the episode, and special guest Will. I really appreciate him coming on the show. And I appreciate you all for listening. Follow us at Lots of Thoughts Sports on almost all platforms. Subscribe on YouTube. Rate 5 stars on your podcast app. And like the video if you're on YouTube as well. Thanks for the support, and have a wonderful rest of your day.